Galw'r cynulliad.
I call the National Assembly to order, and the first item on our agenda this afternoon is questions to the First Minister, and the first question is from Julie Morgan.
Does the First Minister intend to discuss UK-wide health considerations with the Prime Minister?
Well, I have regular discussions with the Prime Minister, but the Cabinet Secretary for Health, Wellbeing and Sport would usually lead any health-related discussions with representatives of the UK Government on health issues.
I thank the First Minister for that response. 2 weeks ago, there was cross-party support here in the Assembly for a motion calling on the UK Government to initiate a statutory public inquiry into the scandal of people with haemophilia who were given contaminated blood in the 1970s and the 80s, which of course has resulted in the death of 70 people from Wales, and many more people are still living with HIV, hepatitis C and liver disease. Will the First Minister raise this directly with the Prime Minister, Theresa May, when he meets her next, so that the families of the 70 people who did die in Wales and all those who were affected can reach some closure?
Well, I can say that the Cabinet Secretary is leading the discussions on this. He wrote to the Secretary of State for Health on the 20th of December, supporting the call for a UK-wide public inquiry on behalf of all those who received contaminated blood. He's also heard at first hand the views of affected individuals and their families, and is now considering the issues and concerns before making a decision on the way forward for those who were affected in Wales.
Angela Burns.
Good afternoon, First Minister. May I first of all reinforce Julie Morgan's calls for that national public inquiry? I think that's very important. The OECD recently reported on the quality of the UK health services, which recommended the need to establish a set of key health data and quality indicators for all of the UK health system, so we can benchmark ourselves effectively, using agreed common definitions, facilitate quality. And I wonder, First Minister, what discussions have you or your Cabinet colleagues had with your counterparts in the other devolved nations and Westminster to facilitate this recommendation so that we can really judge ourselves on a peer-to-peer basis?
There are active discussions between officials about this. The indicators for health vary widely, as we know, but nevertheless, this is something that is in the early stages of exploration.
Rhina Piorwerth.
Diolch, Llywydd. Myself with the question and the comments made by the member for Cardiff North. It might be useful for the First Minister to put health on the agenda in discussions with the UK Government in relation to our exit from the EU. And would the First Minister in that context be prepared to raise the issue of the need for Wales to be able to determine the level of visas to be issued to NHS staff from abroad, given our greater dependence currently on NHS staff from other countries? Also, will he seek an assurance that following the UK leaving the EU, the requirement to get a medicine licensed are not going to be watered down when the lobbyists of the big pharmaceutical companies spot an opportunity?
I think it's hugely important that safety standards are maintained and that drugs are properly tested before they arrive on the market. There have been several instances over many years of drugs that have not gone through proper appraisal, thalidomide being the one that is most well known, and it's hugely important that the current regulations stay in place. I have to say, with regard to the issue of regional work visas, it is an issue that the UK Government has not shut the door on. Therefore, it is an interesting issue. There are practical issues that would need to be resolved, no question about that, but something certainly that we are keen to investigate, certainly at this stage.
Caroline Jones.
First Minister, one of the biggest challenges facing healthcare in the 21st century is the dramatic rise in antimicrobial resistance. There have been a few cases in China where resistance to last resort antibiotics has been seen. Unless drastic action is taken, we will be living in the world that existed before the discovery of penicillin, where people were dying from the simplest of diseases. The O'Neill Review of Antimicrobial Resistance recommends an overhaul of the antibiotic R&D chain and intervention from the G20. What discussion has your government had with the Prime Minister about this issue, and will you join in join me in calling on the UK Government to lead the way in tackling antimicrobial resistance?
Well, disease control and defence is an international matter which needs the fullest amount of international cooperation. Antimicrobial resistance has been an issue for some years. We see, for example, the emergence of TB-resistant strains to drugs. We also see, for example, some conditions that even so-called last resort antibiotics such as vancomycin haven't been able to resolve. So yes, it is a constant battle between humanity and microbes, if I can put it that way, to ensure that we don't start to move backwards and find that there are no longer effective drugs to treat particular conditions. And so international cooperation is hugely important to make sure that we stay ahead of the game.
Cwestiwn 2, Darren Millar.
Question 2, Darren Miller.
Will the First Minister make a statement on the performance of the Betsy Cadwallader University Health Board?
Yes, the Health Board has maintained good performance in some key areas, including cancer, ambulance performance and stroke. And since being put in special measures, they have virtually eliminated diagnostic waits of over 8 weeks. But performance in some other areas is not what we would expect, and the Cabinet Secretary has made his expectations clear.
Well, the Cabinet Secretary needs to do more than making his expectations clear. This is a health board which is in special measures, and yet at the Glenclwyd Hospital at the moment, the routine waiting time for orthopaedic surgery is 112 weeks. That's more than 4 times the government's 26-week target. What specific action is your government taking, given that this health board is in special measures, to address this particular problem with orthopaedic waiting times across North Wales and in particular at Glenclwyd Hospital?
Well, an additional locum hand surgeon has been appointed in Glenclwyd to reduce waits in this area. Some activity will be outsourced to alternative providers. We will continue to enhance the musculoskeletal clinical teams, including a focus on physiotherapy. So yes, there has been the appointment of an extra surgeon, and we believe and expect that the waiting lists will now come down.
Llyr Griffith.
Diolch, Llywydd.
Thank you, Llywydd. There is concern in the Colwyn Bay area that a surgery is closing. Other surgeries are under pressure. There are 3 surgeries, if truth be told, with only 1 GP. It is an area where the MIU in Esgyrth Road has been closed for some years. There is an older population than is the average in that area, and there are hundreds of homes now being built as a result of the local development plan. Would you agree with me that such a situation is unsustainable, and can you tell us what you're doing to assist the local health board to meet the significantly enhanced demand? Because the demand is up, but the provision, of course, is going down.
Well, of course, we have seen examples where the surgeries have said that they no longer wish to remain open. But of course, the Health Board then establishes a system in order to ensure that the system is available. And Prestatyn is an example of that, where the service is better now than it was previously with the surgeries. And so there's a responsibility on the health boards and to ensure that the service continues, that it's broader and better.
Thank you, Llywydd. First Minister, I read an article about the state of the North Wales Health Board, specifically about hip operations, and it claimed that some patients in North Wales are waiting 2 years for such operations. Compared to what's going on in England, it's quite disgraceful. We're waiting 1.5 years longer than is recommended. Now, I myself have been waiting. Sorry, Llywydd.
Can the member be heard,
this is a
please?
very serious matter, which I myself have been waiting 30 weeks to have my own hip looked at. I am on painkillers, which my doctor, when he handed them to me, it said on the box, if you take these for more than 3 days, you will become addicted to these. I asked my doctor about that, and he said, your choice is you suffer the pain or you don't take them. Now, people waiting for hip operations can get very depressed from the constant pain. I know this for myself. They can be taking painkillers which lead to all kinds of side effects. Why is it that in Wales, and North Wales specifically, we have to wait up to 2 years for these operations? This really is not good enough. What are you going to do about that?
Well, I'm surprised if that is the advice that the GP's given him, with regard to a drug, that a drug has been prescribed that is said to be addictive after 3 days. I mean, if that's correct, then I'm surprised that is the advice that he's been given by his own GP. But dealing with the issue that he's raised, it is right to say that waiting times are too long in some parts of the north of Wales, and that much is conceded. But nevertheless, as I've outlined already, and as the Cabinet Secretary has outlined, there are steps that are being taken in order to address the situation, including, of course, having an extra hand surgeon at Glenclwyd, and also, of course, making sure that alternative providers are available to patients as quickly as possible in order for operations to carry out.
Questions now from the party leaders. Leader of the Welsh Conservatives, Andrew Arty-Davies.
Presiding Officer. First Minister, as I've said to you many times in this chamber, you quite rightly identified education as a priority for your stewardship as First Minister here in the National Assembly for Wales. Last week in the Education Committee, evidence was given that showed that the number of teachers in our schools has declined by over 1,000 since 2010. If education is a priority for you, why have you allowed the number of teachers teaching in our schools from 2010 to 2015 to decline by over 1,000?
Bear in mind, of course, the teachers' paying conditions have not been devolved and won't be devolved until next year. So his party bears the responsibility for funding of that particular matter. There will be some schools, of course, where numbers have dropped and as a result teaching staff have dropped. But we look forward now next year to working with the teaching profession to develop a fully comprehensive terms and conditions package to make sure that teaching remains attractive.
Well, it's always someone else's fault, First Minister, with you, isn't it? In fairness, the pupil numbers in our schools have remained relatively static, yet we've seen in excess of 1,000 teachers disappear out of classrooms, both in primary and secondary schools across Wales, on your watch. What also came to light in the committee last week was that the funding gap that is between what is funded in England has stretched from £31 per pupil in 2001 to £607 in 2015. So not only are we getting less teachers in the classroom, but your government is making less money available for those teachers to use to teach the pupils of Wales. What are you going to do about closing that gap when it comes to funding?
He is surely having a laugh. He is the representative of a party who wanted to cut education spending going into the last election. Wanted to cut education spending by 12% and take money out of schools. If he had been in my job now, schools would have been starved of funding. We'd have had fewer teachers and fewer achievements in our schools. We have kept our promises on school funding. We've made sure that schools have been funded properly. We've seen an improvement in GCSE results. We're seeing an improvement in A-level results. We saw the categorisation results from last week where schools had improved. We provided money to help those from deprived backgrounds. We've helped those schools financially that are not performing as they should to start to improve. We have a good record in education, not the cuts that he would propose.
Well, obviously you must have been living in a different universe, because we had no proposals for cuts in education at the last Assembly election.
That's David Melding.
Rather bizarrely,
yeah, that's David Melding.
Living in a different
the
universe.
Budget.
What we've had since Christmas are the PISA results. We've had the Estin report that has clearly shown, on your watch, education has either gone backwards or stood still. That's a fact. That's Estin, and that is the PISA results, First Minister. That is a fact, and the evidence given to the Education Committee last week clearly pointed to less teachers and less money available in schools here in Wales. So the issue you've got now is with the news today that the introduction of the new curriculum is also hitting problems when it comes to the leadership and strategic direction, as well as the pioneer schools not knowing exactly where they're going with the introduction of the new curriculum. How can you give any certainty that you're going to right the wrongs of your first term in office so that pupils, teachers and parents can see genuine improvement in school? Or are we actually going to be on the mystery tour that the Scottish Education Minister, John Sweeney, said that their system's going on at the moment? Are you prepared to allow Welsh schools to go on a mystery tour, First Minister?
I have no idea what he means by that. If you're going to explain all that, then there it is. I'm not letting him off the skewer on this one, okay? He has fought elections on the basis of a 12% cut in education funding. That is a fact. That is a fact. He stood as a Conservative candidate in the election in 2011. In 2011, when his leader went on live TV, and said, we need to cut education by 20%. It's there, it's evidence, not the alternative facts that he wants to present. And what do we see? We see a school buildings programme, new schools opening all across Wales. Members will see where they are. If he had been in charge, nothing would have been built, because there wouldn't be a school buildings programme, because his party cut the school buildings programme in England. We wouldn't have seen the improvement in schools in terms of categorisation. We wouldn't have seen the pupil deprivation grant. We wouldn't have seen the money that we have put into Schools Challenge Cymru. We wouldn't have seen the improvements in GCSEs. We wouldn't see the improvements in A-level. No, it's right to say, under the Welsh Conservatives, Welsh education would be consigned to the dustbin.
Arweinydd Grŵp
Leader of the UKIP group, Neil Hamilton.
First Minister will know that I'm a strong supporter of the Welsh Government's policy of achieving 1 million Welsh speakers by 2050, and I'm a great admirer of the Minister for Lifelong Learning, who brings his legendary diplomatic and leadership skills to the achievement of that objective. And in particular, I approve of the basic principle of tolerance and respect both for English speakers and Welsh speakers that he has brought to the development of this policy, which I think has made it marketable beyond areas where it might otherwise have been. Does the First Minister think that the success of this policy of the Welsh Government is being put at risk by Plaid Cymru-controlled Carmarthenshire County Council, which is forcing a Welsh language school upon people in Llangennych near Llanelli against the overwhelming wishes of the majority of parents in that village?
Well, these are matters for Carmarthenshire Council, and they must make an assessment in terms of what they see is the right solution for any particular area within their county boundary.
Well, the Welsh Medium Education Strategy says that Wales should be a country where people may choose to live their lives through the medium of either or both Welsh or English, and I think that's a very reasonable objective. Here we've had a consultation process in Llangennych, 18 months after the decision was actually made, in which 5 people have opposed it for the proposal for every one in favour, and there have been 757, which is an enormous number for a small village, responses against this proposal by Carmarthenshire County Council. It's not a consultation, it's a non-consultation. Does he agree with Michaela Bellows, who's leading the people who are against this proposal, when she says that Welsh by compulsion breeds resentment?
Well, as I said, these are matters for Carmarthenshire Council. As a government, we of course are supportive of the Welsh language. We want to see an extension of Welsh medium education and more children involved in it. But at the end of the day, it is for Carmarthenshire Council to justify the decisions that it takes in view of the elections coming in May, of course.
I agree that is the constitutional position, but the Welsh Government, because this is a Welsh Government policy, improving the condition of the Welsh language in Wales and maximising its appeal and its reach, must have a persuasive influence here. There is a practical solution to this problem, because at the moment there are 3 Welsh medium schools in Llanelli with 170 surplus places. 120 out-of-area Welsh-speaking pupils are currently being brought into the school in Llangennych, whilst 81 English medium pupils are being taken out of the school in Llangennych. What we need to do is have a practical solution on the ground which satisfies both parties. That can be done without putting at risk the acceptability of what otherwise I think is an excellent policy which shows the way for the Welsh language.
Well, these are matters that I would have expected Carmarthenshire Council to consider in coming to the decision that they did. It's not enough for the Welsh Government to intervene, but it is important, of course, that any local authority takes into account the views of those who live locally, whilst considering, of course, the encouragement that we give as a government to supporting the Welsh language. But ultimately, it is a matter for the Council to decide and, of course, to explain.
Arweinydd Plaid Cymru.
Plaid Cymru leader Leanne Wood.
I'm sure Carmarthenshire Council would have appreciated more support from you, First Minister, when it comes to the Welsh language. But I want to turn to a matter of income differences. First Minister, when it comes to differences in income between
Can we hear the leader of Plaid Cymru, please?
Diolch llawer. When it comes to differences in income between its regions and nations, the UK is one of the most unequal states in Europe, and Wales suffers from this imbalance as well. To address this imbalance, our market towns and post-industrial towns need good quality public sector jobs. Now, HMRC, DWP, the Job Centre are moving jobs from towns which suffer from low wages, like Porthmadog, Llanelli and Porth in the Rhondda, and jobs are being moved to more centralised sites. It's not just UK government departments doing this. There's a consultation on moving ambulance service jobs from Carmarthenshire to Bridgend. Do you recognise this centralisation agenda, and are you concerned about jobs and services being moved out of communities to a smaller number of locations?
And I deplored the decision taken by HMRC in Porthmadog and other locations, including my own town, some years ago. In the same way, I certainly am concerned about the withdrawal of commercial banks from many of our communities, and the need to ensure that, for example, the post office is then able to offer up the same kind of services that the bank does. That depends, of course, on the post offices being there as well, which is why, of course, we had the Post Office Development Fund in place that helped so many communities to keep that service.
I share your concern about the post offices and banks, and there's a real concern about the viability of some of our town centres if this agenda continues. We know what the UK government agenda is, but, First Minister, you have levers too to counter this on the Welsh Revenue Authority. Now, Plaid Cymru would agree that Treforest Industrial Estate is a better location than Cardiff. But that decision means that Porthmadog and Wrexham feel very hard done by, and they now need an alternative offer. So what plans do you have to support a Welsh public sector presence in the northwest of Wales and also in Wrexham? You've said that the WRA will have a presence in Aberystwyth and Llandudno. How many jobs does a presence represent? And when it comes to the targets that you have for the distribution of Welsh Government jobs across the country, are you on course to reach those targets?
Well, in terms of the number of jobs, the total number of jobs will be 40 in the Welsh Revenue Authority. There will be some people who will be able to be based at home in order to work. I did look very, very carefully at where the WRA could be based, and a report was commissioned to that end, and members should know that report, I believe, is in the library. It was placed in the library on Friday. The skills that are required for the Welsh Revenue Authority at the moment are skills that aren't actually available in Wales to any great extent. They're not the same skills as the people in Porthmadog have. We have to recruit from outside Wales in the main in order for those skills to be available to us when the Welsh Revenue Authority begins in April. It was made very clear to me that bringing people to Cardiff in order to work was the option that was easiest in terms of recruiting people. But of course, that doesn't mean in the future that the body can't reconsider where it might go. But at the moment, certainly, the body will go to Treforest, and that was the strong advice that was by far the location that was favourable in terms of being able to attract the people with the specialist skills, many of whom are actually in London at the moment.
First Minister, if there's a skills shortage in Wales, that's down to your responsibility. You are responsible for the skills of people in this country. I want to move on to transport now, though. 12 months ago, you unveiled a plan for the North Wales Metro, and that plan failed to include Gwynedd, Conwy or Ynys Môn, though it did include Cheshire, Liverpool and Manchester. Now, the maps indicate that many of the routes are existing rail and bus lines, and your Economy Secretary was quoted by the BBC as saying that £50 million would be available for this. Do you really think that £50 million is enough to deliver an actual metro? Will you commit today that the both metro systems that are planned in Wales will start with the points furthest away from the densely populated towns and cities, so that those people who feel distant from this institution and from the centres and the arterial roads are able to see some early benefit from this transport investment?
Well, first of all, the Welsh Revenue Authority will be up and running in April of next year. It needs people quickly. It's not possible to train people up in the specialist skills in the time allowed, and that was the judgment that we took. It's not possible suddenly to train and have a pool of skilled people in a very short space of time. Those people are in London in the main at the moment. They are specialists, and we're looking to recruit them. The skill doesn't exist in the main in Wales. In terms of transport, well, the Metro was our idea. Of course we want to promote it. The North East Wales Metro was our idea. The South Wales Metro was first mentioned by me in Bedwas Rugby Club in 2008, of all places, and we are seeing movement on that. The development work on the North East Wales Metro is moving forward, and of course we will continue to support transport in all parts of Wales. We have called incessantly for the electrification of the North Wales mainland as far as Holyhead, and that is something we want to see the UK government deliver in the future. And we want to make sure that as we look at the North East Wales Metro, that in time it can look then to expand west. These are not metro systems that are designed to be self-contained. They are systems that are designed to be extended in the future.
Question 3,
Question 3, Sian Gwenllian. Will the First Minister make a statement on how the Welsh Government intends to distribute economic prosperity across Wales?
Well, taking Wales forward sets out our commitments to deliver resilient communities and prosperity for all, and economic prosperity will underpin 4 cross-cutting strategies that will be published this spring.
As we've heard, there was an announcement that the headquarters of the Welsh Revenue Authority will go to Treforest. Now, having seen the paper that you mentioned and how the location was selected, the criteria made it entirely impossible for anything to come to North Wales or to anywhere beyond easy reach of Cardiff. It related to skills, but 2 related to being close to stakeholders and close to customers. Caernarfon nor Porthmadog were on the list of 6 possible locations being considered by government, despite what you told us here on the 10th of January. Will you give detailed consideration to the need for new criteria when considering the location of posts, criteria that will allow the dispersal of growth across Wales? Otherwise, the recent words by the Labour Party, both here and in Westminster by your Shadow Chancellor, are empty words.
Well, we must remember reality here, and it's extremely important to realise that we have to ensure that it's easy to achieve and to secure the expertise that we need. That doesn't mean that there isn't a role for North Wales or for Mid Wales, because we will ensure that there are offices there in order to give customers the service, but we're talking about jobs that are specialist jobs that aren't available in Wales. More people will come from London, and so we must realise that these are different jobs to the ones that we had in Porthmadog, but we have to look for opportunities for people in towns such as Porthmadog to become part of the authority as the authority grows.
First Minister, yesterday the Economy Secretary kicked off a week of job announcements with the outstanding news that the BBI Group is consolidating and expanding its UK manufacturing operations onto a single site in Crumlin, in my constituency at the Border Technology Park. This is in great part thanks to Welsh Government grant of 1.8 million. And this considerable investment will see this BBI employment in Wales increased almost double by 2020, and it will provide excellent and qualitative career opportunities in the South Wales Valleys region, fostering closer links to the scientific and academic community, and it will provide a significant boost to the local economy. First Minister, isn't this further evidence that the Welsh Government intends to distribute economic prosperity across Wales, and when can the First Minister next come to Islwyn to celebrate this excellent news?
Well, I'm sure I will be visiting Islwyn soon, but BBI's announcement is an indication of the hard work done by the Welsh Government to support businesses throughout the nation, to help them retain and expand their operations here. And I was very pleased that the Welsh Government's investment and support has allowed the BBI Group's headcount in Wales to grow, particularly as these will be high-quality management, scientific and technical roles. In addition to that, it was my pleasure the week before last to spend time in the north of Wales to see some of the excellent projects that are being taken forward there as well in terms of job creation and tourism and education.
Russell George.
First Minister, the UK's industrial strategy aims at closing regional productivity gaps, and here in Wales, regional productivity varies widely from Anglesey, having 53% of the UK's GVA, compared with 90% in Cardiff. And your government has previously stated that variations in levels of GVA per head are affected by commuting patterns. Now, well, the Welsh Government has put 80 million of European funding into the Heads of the Valleys road improvements. Mid and North Wales have traditionally suffered from poor transport connectivity. And note the exception, of course, the Newtown bypass, which is making good progress. But can I ask what your government is doing to close these regional gaps in economic prosperity caused by inadequate transport infrastructure?
Well, he has slightly argued against himself there. by saying that there's a lack of infrastructure when indeed the Newtown bypass is being built, and that is something, of course, that is hugely important. We've seen improvements in the A470 over the past few years in terms of straightening the road. We've seen it recently in Dolgellau, for example, and over the years, Cross Foxes, Pont yr Afanc, further south in Cwmbach Llechryd with the bypass, Christmas Pitch, as it's called, on the way to on the road from Irwood. So there are many examples of where the A470 has been strengthened, and of course, in terms of the rail network, we've seen improvements on the in terms of passenger services on the through the constituency that he represents, and there are important opportunities in the future both to improve the service and potentially look at new stations. And Bow Street is an example of that. So we've demonstrated our commitment to transport, both public and private.
Cwestiwn 4, Eluned.
Question 4, Eluned Morgan.
First Minister, make a statement on the Welsh Government's economic development plans.
Well, we plan to continue to support businesses in their growth, to invest in high-quality infrastructure and improve economic development conditions.
The First Minister will be aware that last week I brought a group of individuals together who have a track record of delivery in rural Wales to make the case for developing a specific economic development strategy for rural Wales. And whilst the city-region model is a model which may work for many parts of the country, does the First Minister agree that it's not necessarily a model which is relevant nor appropriate for rural Wales? Do you agree that there's an urgency to develop such a plan, in particular in the wake of the Brexit vote, as the impact on withdrawal is likely to be greater in rural Wales than elsewhere in the country? And will you make a commitment to take seriously the suggestions which will be submitted by this group and use them as the basis for developing a comprehensive economic strategy for rural Wales?
Yes, I will. Of course, Carmarthenshire and Pembrokeshire are part of the Swansea Bay City region, and it's important that this is not seen as an urban and rural divide. I thank the member for the work that she's done and the passion that she shows for rural Wales. The city region is not a one-size-fits-all. There will be other footprints that will need to be used in the future to develop the economies of rural Wales. But it's right to say there are challenges. Beyond 2020, we will see £260 million disappear at this moment in time from the Welsh economy as farming subsidies go. There is no certainty in that regard. So, yes, now is certainly the time to start planning for a rural economy in Wales that will lose substantial amounts of money unless the UK government steps up to the mark and makes sure the money is there.
Paul Davis.
First Minister, one of the key elements of economic development plans of the Welsh Government were the enterprise zones, including the creation of the Cleddau Waterway Park in my constituency. Now, given that these enterprise zones are crucial to your plans, can you give us the latest news on the development of the Milford Haven enterprise zone, including the progress made towards Centre of Excellence in Marine and Engineering, and also the development opportunities identified specifically by your government for the enterprise park, in concentrating not only on energy but also on tourism?
Well, 65 businesses have benefited. They've received in excess of £2 million of financial support as regards the rate relief scheme, and a group has been established in the enterprise zone itself, which has a programme of work to support businesses and secure new contracts. And we've seen investments in the zone as well, such as concert equipment projects, which has invested £1 million in Milford Haven itself. And now Valero has submitted a planning application to create a new energy generation site in Pembrokeshire. So many things have happened in the enterprise zone. Adam Price.
Welsh income per capita in 2014 was 70.5% of the UK average, the lowest ever recorded since records began in 1954 for Wales, indeed the lowest ever for any UK nation or region. Bounced back to 71% in 2015, but that was one of the lowest figures ever as well. Is the First Minister prepared to commit the Welsh Government that we will not see this income per capita figure fall even further? But if it does, after 8 years as First Minister, would he be prepared to take personal responsibility?
Well, bear in mind, of course, it was his party that was in charge of economic development for 4 years, so it's not as if his party have no role in this, and we saw GDP go down then, and it shows, well, I know that's easily forgotten, that, isn't it? But there we are. It does show the challenges that exist in terms of raising GDP, and the key to it ultimately is skills. The more skills people have, the more they can earn, the higher their GDP actually goes. And we have shown that we can deliver. As I say, unemployment 4.1%, lower than England, Scotland, Northern Ireland, best figures for foreign direct investment for 30 years, and GDP is now the challenge. Unemployment is not as much of an issue as GDP. It's going in the right direction, and we'll continue to equip our people with the skills that they need in order to increase their productivity. That much is true, but also, of course, to increase GDP per head as well.
Question 5, Llŷr.
Question 5, Llŷr Griffith. Will the First Minister make a statement on dental services in North Wales?
Well, the Health Board is working to improve the provision of dental services, and progress has been made. Some 30,000 additional patients are accessing NHS dentistry than a decade ago.
You may be aware, First Minister, that the main reason the children visit emergency units today is because of tooth decay, and it's crucial that good dental care is provided for them at an early age. But having said that, school children from the Bala area to the outskirts of Wrexham have actually lost access to a mobile dentist who visited schools because there was no funding in the budget to buy a new vehicle. Now, there is another vehicle available, but that currently is serving as a permanent dentistry in Pwllheli because of a shortage of dentists there. And this specific service has seen 4,000 children over the past year. 500 of those needed further treatment. Do you agree with me that losing that service is quite unacceptable? And what are you doing to ensure that it's reinstated for the future?
Well, this is a temporary measure. I know that the Health Board are looking at fresh ways of ensuring that the service survives. And they are looking at mobile units from other areas in order to achieve that. And they are considering opportunities as regards funding a new mobile unit to ensure this happens. And in the interim, there is care available in Corwin and in Dolgellau, but these are temporary measures, and the hope is that the service will restart ultimately.
Thank you. Well, some 40% of children still don't visit the dentist regularly. A third of children are starting school each year already showing signs of tooth decay. And it's the most common single reason why children aged 5 to 9 require admissions to hospital. Given that this North Wales mobile dental unit stopped last September, and the Health Board is only reporting now their bid for funding to purchase a replacement vehicle and looking at redeployment of other mobile dentistry resources to provide support in the area, isn't it a little late 6 months later, and should this not have been treated as a priority? And if you agree with that, will your colleagues get on the phone to the Health Board and ensure that with your partnership this is treated as a priority?
Well, the Cabinet Secretary hears what the member says. As I say, there are alternative provisions in place, although the intention is to restart the service. I can say, though, that because of these designed to smile, the latest dental survey of 5-year-olds in 2014 to 15 shows a 6% reduction in the proportion of children with experience of dental decay in Wales when compared to the previous survey undertaken in 2011 to 2012. And over the last 8 years, we have seen a 12% reduction in the proportion of children with at least one tooth affected by decay. And that's an example of the success of Design for Life.
Question 6, Dai Lloyd.
Question 6, Dai Lloyd. Thank you, Llywydd. What assessment has the First Minister made of disabled access at train stations across Wales?
Accessibility for all is a cornerstone of our approach to public transport. We monitor passenger satisfaction with stations using research undertaken by Transport Focus, and of course, following that, we see what kind of barriers should be removed in order to ensure that no barriers exist in train stations for those who wish to use them.
Thank you for that response, First Minister. And further to that, over the past few months, I've received a number of complaints about the ability of disabled people to use a number of train stations, including Cwmbran, Abergavenny and Pontypool. Now, whilst recognising that train stations are not devolved at the moment, what are you as a government doing to ensure that stations across Wales do reach the appropriate standards?
Well, I agree totally with that. 245 stations come under the franchise in England and Wales, and only a quarter are staffed at present. We will expect significant improvements to be made as regards access to these stations over the term of the next franchise.
Which had terrible disabled access after many, many years of campaigning, particularly by my predecessor, Brian Gibbons. The station improvement grant was allocated to ensure that Port Talbot became upgraded, and I'm sure you'll welcome the changes that we now see in Port Talbot for disabled access and disabled facilities on the station. However, it's slightly been tarnished by perhaps some of the conditions and flooring and dirt we're now seeing as a consequence of perhaps an indecision between Network Rail and Arriva Trains as to who runs the station. Will you learn lessons from this development to ensure that disabled access is there and it's going to continue to be a good access, clean access for everybody? And will you also look at the opportunities gained in transport hubs around railway stations, so disabled access is not just on the station itself, but also getting to the station and from there into the station?
Well, transport hubs are hugely important in terms of delivering public transport across Wales, and they have to be as accessible as they have to be accessible, full stop. We are aware of cleanliness issues at the station. The arrangements are currently being finalised for a new cleaning regime and security presence until the end of the franchise in October of next year, and after that date the services will be provided by the rail operator.
Nick Ramsey.
First Minister, Di Lloyd in his opening question mentioned the problems for people with disabilities at Abergavenny Station. If I can focus on those, you may be aware of the work of one of my constituents, Disabled Rights Campaigner, Access Rights Campaigner, Dan Biddle, who's worked tirelessly both in my area and across Wales over the last few years to try and improve disabled access. Whilst you're right to say, and Di Lloyd was right to point out, that a large aspect of this isn't devolved, of course the management of Abergavenny Station is within the remit of Arriva Trains and that franchise. What are you doing to make sure that as that new franchise date of 2018, I believe it is, fast approaches, that disabled issues really are put at the heart of all this, so that even if they can't be fully solved when the new franchise starts, a new focus can be put on that, so that disabled people in my area in Abergavenny and across Wales do have that access to stations which they deserve?
Yes, we know that we will be in full control of the franchise. The opportunity is there to make sure that our stations are then accessible. It is hugely important that those issues are dealt with, certainly as part of the next franchise arrangements, to make sure that all can use trains in the future.
Gareth Bennett.
We had a visit to the Assembly last week from WizKids, a group of wheelchair users who had recurring complaints that transport staff hadn't been trained to deal with disabled people. This was unfortunately the case with rail staff, bus drivers and taxi drivers. What can your government do to ensure that transport staff are properly trained in this respect?
Well, it's a matter for the operators, of course, to ensure they comply with the law. I've seen staff, certainly in my own station in Bridgend, very competently assist people who need assistance, and certainly I've heard nothing but praise about the staff there. With regard to bus services, it's patchy. I do remember some years ago the council in Bridgend installing raised curbs at every bus stop, only for the bus company to introduce buses that didn't lower. They were effectively coaches with a seat that could be lowered onto the ground. Quite often that seat didn't work. It's a fine example of a transport company not thinking about the needs of its customers. But certainly it's hugely important that transport companies comply with the law as it stands in order to make sure that access is there for all.
Question 7, Rhina Bjorn.
Question 7, Rhina Bjorwerth. Thank you, Llywydd. Will the First Minister make a statement on funding for postgraduate students in Wales?
The Cabinet Secretary for Education will confirm this week that loans are to be made available to students beginning a postgraduate master's course in the 2017-18 academic year.
Thank you for that response. Perhaps the First Minister will be aware, following an item on ITV Wales News about the story of Emma Stenson from my constituency, who has turned to crowdfunding to try and pay her way through a postgraduate course to become a physician's associate in Bangor. Now, Emma has a first-class degree in medical sciences, but she is having difficulty in affording the course because of her and similar students' inability to access postgraduate loans in Wales. Now, the Health Service needs Emma, and therefore students like Emma need that support now, as well as the pledge for students in the next academic year, and we are grateful for that, of course. How can we look at students who are at risk of dropping out of courses now in an area where we truly need their expertise?
Well, of course, yn dechrau.
Well, of course, the course will be starting in the autumn of this year, and by then the assistance and support will be available. And, of course, they will have had a much shorter wait than students from England, but one of the things that they had to resolve was the fact that more funding is available for postgraduates in order to ensure that, and that will happen in the autumn.
Finally, question 8, Jenny Rathbone.
What assurances the First Minister had from the UK Government that Brexit won't be used to water down food standards currently guaranteed by our membership of the EU?
Well, these are, of course, devolved. It'll be a matter for this Assembly to decide what happens with food standards. I know that the Minister for Social Services and Public Health recently met with the Chair of the Food Standards Agency. We, of course, effectively buy into the services of the Food Standards Agency. They are committed to ensuring that the exit from the EU will not compromise the UK's first-class food safety standards, built up after many years of problems in the past, of course.
Unfortunately, there are villains across the world who are keen to penetrate any weaknesses in our defences on this matter. We can remember the Horsegate scandal, Horseburger scandal. And what I'm concerned about is that Theresa May seems hell-bent on a deal of some sort with the United States, which has much lower standards of food provenance and than this country or any other part of the European Union. So what assurances have we had from the UK Government that they will bear in mind the important role that the European Food Standards Agency plays in ensuring that the labelling on the food is what it says it is, and that we are absolutely up to the mark in terms of identifying adulterated food that might come onto the market otherwise?
Well, it is the case that during the Second World War, American forces wouldn't use British abattoirs. Their standards were seen to be too low. In the 1990s, I had a bit of a sideline as a lawyer in prosecuting abattoirs, and the standards were beyond description in some of them. What we have now, of course, is practice that is world-leading, practice that other countries certainly have been following, and practices that mean that our food is amongst the safest in the world, and we should not play around with that hard-earned and hard-won status. And we will make sure, in terms of our devolved competence, that food standards are not lowered, certainly here in Wales.
Diolch i'r Prif Weinidog.